start over again. So this is like deja vu. But anyway, good evening. Welcome to Encompass 2045 Facebook Live event on delay. We appreciate you taking time out of your evening to join us this evening to listen in and see what sort of things are going on with the 2045 plan. We'd like to discuss, this is our 9th Metropolitan Transportation Plan, so quite an achievement. And we've been doing this since 1968. So first of all, let's introduce the staff that are here this evening. Start with Eric.
Eric Pollard, Air Quality and Clean Cities Coordinator.
Jennifer Spesta, Transportation Manager.
John Sharp, Deputy Director.
Rachel Meinke, Public Information Director.
Jordan Evans, Transportation Planner.
Thank you very much. This meeting is scheduled for about an hour, but we are flexible and we'll go longer if we receive a number of questions from everyone this evening. You can post the questions in the chat if you like, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. And there will be links to various resources that you can access later. So now we're going to go to Jennifer Sebesta, who will now present on a PowerPoint to give you more background about ACOG and Encompass 2045. We will then get back to an interactive exercise after that. Jennifer.
Thank you very much. So I'll try to be a little bit faster than I was going to be, just to not take up any more time from your evening. Seems that what will go wrong tonight. So, all right. And now I can't advance.
Oh, we're going.
Okay. Okay.
All right, pardon for the delay. So we just want to give you a brief overview of ACOG in case you're not that familiar with who ACOG is and what we do. ACOG is a voluntary association of local governments within central Oklahoma. We were established in 1966, and since then we've been advocating for regional cooperation. We've also helped address common issues within the region. We also promote efficient government services and strive to improve quality of life for all central Oklahomans. So ACOG also serves as the Metropolitan Planning Organization for Central Oklahoma. In this role, ACOG works with local governments, transit providers within the region, the Oklahoma Department of Transportation, the Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administrations, local stakeholders, to develop a comprehensive, coordinated, and continuous transportation planning process. Some key functions that we do as the MPO is identifying and evaluating alternative transportation improvement options. We develop long-range transportation plans and implement those plans through short-range programs. That's all I know. So one of our key products as an MPO is to develop a regional metropolitan transportation plan. This is our long-range transportation plan that addresses transportation priorities and funding over a 30-year time frame. Our plan was last updated in 2016, and we update it about every 5 years. And this is a plan that's required for us to continue to receive federal transportation funding. So our current MTP, or our long-range plan, is known as Encompass 2045. Our base year for this plan is 2015, and our forecast year is 2045. Encompass includes both policy recommendations and specific projects, which we'll address later in this presentation. The plan also sets goals and objectives. We analyze population and employment data, existing and future transportation networks, and land use scenarios. We'll explain what those are in a little bit. Encompass 2045 also addresses current and future multimodal transportation needs, while also ensuring that the plan is financially constrained, which is essentially, we have to show that we can afford the projects that are included in the plan. And with the last couple of surface transportation bills, we also had to show that, address what's known as performance measures, so making sure that the projects we select are actually making a difference. So we kicked off our public engagement process with a survey in September of 2020. The survey focused on regional transportation priorities and goals. We received about 500 responses. We also developed a stakeholder advisory group, or what we know as the SAG, consisting of representatives from cities and county governments, state and federal agencies, advocacy and transportation mode groups, private businesses, and the public. We held 4 meetings from October 2020 to September 21. We covered a variety of plan-related topics at those meetings. We also held a number of in-meeting activities and posted surveys that were conducted to gain additional feedback. Feedback was also gathered from ACOG's other various advisory, technical, and policy committees. So, based on feedback from the public survey and SAG members and from our other committees, we use the same set of goals from our previous long-range plan, so those 7 goals that are on your screen. These goals continue to address regional priorities while incorporating ODOT's statewide goals from their long-range plan, as well as the FHWA's national planning factors. Next, we developed or updated objectives for each of those goals. The goals and objectives will be incorporated into ACOG's short-range implementation programs. So, into the meat and potatoes of the plan. So, population is expected to increase by 36% and employment by 49% over the course of the plan. One way to analyze how growth will impact the amount and quality of travel in the region is by conducting what's known as land use scenarios. These scenarios outline potential alternative development patterns and allow us to see how development could impact the transportation system. Encompass 2045 utilized 2 land use scenarios. One is known as the trend, which is what we are sort of doing currently. The next is a nodal development pattern, so cluster development around employment centers, downtowns, things like that in the region. These 2 scenarios are then incorporated into a regional travel demand model. And we see on the screen there at the bottom, one question that we've received recently is regarding the long-term impacts of the pandemic on development and transportation. While we don't really know what those impacts will be over the long-term course of the plan, we do know that remote work will continue into the future. Roughly right now we have, for our base year, we had a 4% remote work for jobs in the region. And we've increased that to about 15% moving forward. And that's a consistent increase that we're seeing over MPOs across the nation. So after creating these land use scenarios, data is fed into our travel demand model, where we ran analysis on our current or existing traffic, so our 2015 traffic, as well as our 2020 traffic, and then develop a series of transportation alternatives, which are essentially a set of transportation projects that we analyze. So alternate 1 consists of existing transportation system plus projects that are either committed or currently have dedicated funding. Alternate 2 is everything that, from alternate 1 plus projects that were submitted during our Encompass 2045 call for projects that occurred earlier this year. And then alternate 3, which is still in the works, includes alternate 1 and 2 projects, plus an illustrative projects that we'll discuss later in this presentation. So the map on your screen shows the projects that were submitted during our call for projects. We have a number of widenings still. The plan typically includes a number of widenings each time. What we saw this time was an increase in the number of bicycle and pedestrian projects that were submitted during this call. We also have bridge, intersection, some roundabouts, a few new construction projects, and some major reconstructions. What you won't see on this list is maintenance projects. Maintenance is already calculated within the cost of the plan, so we don't typically show those projects on the list. Okay, can you pull up the map? us 1 second, we're pulling up a map. All right, so on your screen is alternate 1. We analyze traffic in the region during our peak period. So everything that you see in red is something that is considered what has a level of service of F, which is a technical term that means the facility demand is greater than its capacity during this peak period. Anything that you see that is purple, that has 2 times the demand as the capacity that the facility is built for during this peak period. So this is alternate 1, which is sort of considered our no build alternate. That is projects that are funded currently, in the works, but nothing new. So you can see a lot of red, a lot of interstate facilities, intersections. When we run it for alternate 2, which includes those future projects, you see a marked decrease in red and purple on the map. All right. Back to the presentation. So when analyzing our 2 alternate networks, we did run it on each scenario. You can see on this table on your screen. This is a lot of information, so I'll highlight the 3 most important things to most people. That is congested lane miles, the daily hours of delay, and delay per trip. You can see each of those for the future increases from the base year quite a lot. Alternate 1, which is the alternate not including the future projects, there is a marked increase there over alternate 2. So after we analyzed our alternate networks, we ended up coming up with our recommended plan. So that was to accept the 277 projects that were submitted during our call for projects. Then we have, those 106 widening projects, the 69 bike ped projects. We also had, again, those new construction, a few road diets, roundabouts, which is something that we didn't have in our last plan. They're sort of new to our region. So we had a number of communities submit roundabout projects. There is a link on your screen. And then Rachel will be posting some links in Facebook that will take you to our resource hub for you to explore these projects a little bit further if you're interested in doing so. Aside from those projects, we also have a number of additional priorities. So active transportation, complete streets. These are all things that we'll get into right now.
Yeah, great. So yeah, active transportation has become a big priority for the region. And as you just saw on that last list, we're sort of putting our money where our mouth is on that. Bike pedestrian facilities are becoming more of a priority for each of our communities. And then for ACOG, it's been a priority for a number of years, especially these last 5 years since our last plan. We've put a lot more resources into this program. Recently, we completed our regional active transportation plan. So this is a long-range plan that's focused specifically on things like bikeability, walkability, being able to get around our region without a car. So whether you're walking, biking, using a wheelchair, skateboarding, really any of the above, we're trying to make that easier and more accessible. Part of this plan, we did a number of things, but one of those is a facility and design guidance area where we have some resources for our communities and people who are building our roads and our sidewalks and our bike lanes for some of the things we would like to see. We've also included on this link, you see there a link to our Bicycle and Pedestrian Resource Center. This is a great resource for you to look up what we're doing in the region. On this, we have things like maps of our current bike network, areas that have sidewalks. We have a crash map on there that's focused on bicyclists and pedestrians. And then a number of other things, including some priority areas for new bike facilities and sidewalks. So we've definitely put more resources and energy into this in the last 5 years, and our communities are seeing that, and they're also making this more of a priority. Here, next one. Also, kind of in tandem with active transportation is our complete streets. This is something that we just adopted this last year, in August of 2021. This policy will apply to all projects that are funded through ACOG programs. So as you remember that list, the top one was road widenings. But under this policy, those widenings would be required to include some sort of facility for bicycles, pedestrians, things like sidewalks or bike lanes, so that we're not just widening roads expecting more cars, but we're also improving facilities for people to get around if they're not in a car.
All right. So aside from having bike ped projects, widenings, those type of projects in our plan, we also created a regional transit network. Right now, this is what's known as illustrative. So while we would like to see this happen in the future, right now there's no dedicated funding to see it through. So it's in the plan, but it's not included in necessarily the recommended plan portion because of that lack of funding. So the map on your screen shows a number of rail facilities, many of those proposed by the Regional Transportation Authority. We also have an expanded bus system, modern streetcar, and then we included some on-demand service to some of our smaller communities just to make sure that everyone is receiving transit access that needs it.
All right, on the air quality side of things, the good news is over the decades, our air quality has improved. As vehicles get cleaner, power plants, we're seeing a good trend line, as you can see in the graph there. But we're always looking at how many bad ozone days we have in particular, but also particulate matter and greenhouse gases, and how the region is doing in those areas. ACOG's role in this is to inform the public of when those bad ozone days are going to happen, but also look forward in planning for the future and continued improved air quality. One of the things we have to look at in particular is staying in attainment with air quality standards. And over the last 2 years, ACOG has been developing a cost of non-attainment study, which will put and quantify what the cost would be if the region does not meet those federal air quality standards. That study should be published within the next month or so, and we're expecting to see a cost of between 9 and 15 billion reflected in that study. So it reflects the urgency for us to remain in attainment, to continue to improve our air quality. So some of those programs that we have here at ACOG that are looking at that, sort of our focus for a long time has been on our Ozone Alert Day program, which both looks to inform the public the day before we expect to see elevated ozone pollution levels. So those folks with asthma, COPD, heart disease can prepare and adjust their plans as necessary. And then the other part of it is all of us in Central Oklahoma can take actions to reduce emissions on those days, like putting off mowing, carpooling, riding the bus. And so we encourage those things as well. We've got a couple of direct grant programs to community partners that are focused on air quality improvement projects. One is our Air Quality Small Grant Program, which has traditionally funded a lot of bike and pedestrian projects, also transit projects, any project that really reduces that single occupancy vehicle travel trips. And then our Public Fleet Grant Program is focused on transitioning our fleets from older diesel and gasoline vehicles to alternative fuel and electric vehicles. So we're looking at where we are in our current emissions around the region, and that's part of our Ozone Advanced program, but we'll continue to take steps to look at the future and how we can stay in attainment and continue to improve our air quality.
So aside from bike ped, transit and air quality recommendations, we also have a number of others. One of those is a focus on regional intelligent transportation systems, or ITS, and congestion management strategies to help alleviate congestion and increase traffic flow in the region. Many of these strategies could be more cost effective than major construction projects on roadways, including widenings. So it's something that we want to focus on in the future. ACOG also supports the continued expansion of the electric vehicle charging network, both within central Oklahoma and around the state. We continue to plan for connected and autonomous vehicles, micromobility, and other emerging transportation options. So I mentioned earlier in the plan that Encompass has to be financially constrained. Right now, we're anticipated the cost to be 10 billion with a B. The majority of that cost is for maintenance of our existing transportation system. The other cost is for roadway projects and transit projects. The final task for our plan is to run an impacts analysis. So we want to ensure that our recommended plan does not have a disproportionately negative impact on social, economic, or environmental issues. But we would like to stress that this does not replace NEPA for individual projects. This is just a regional analysis. So what's next? We are doing a number of public involvement activities. This Facebook Live event is one. We've definitely had some trial and error tonight, but I think we made it through pretty good. Please visit the ACOG calendar of events on the ACOG website for additional events moving forward. We have a number of blog posts scheduled, social media posts. There is a Twitter hashtag event on Sunday evening, if you would like to join us then. We have our draft plan document that's available on the ACOG website. We have a current, our public review and comment period is currently open. It runs through November 12th. If you would like to submit a comment in writing, please do so. You can email transportation@acogok.org or send us a letter in the mail if you would prefer. There are some resources that Rachel will be posting to Facebook that will provide some additional information and some other resources for you to look at. And right now, our anticipated final plan adoption is November 18th at our policy committee meeting. So how can you help us a little bit more? I mentioned the social media posts, so please share those with others that might be interested. We also have a public survey open. You can find that on our blog and on our social media sites. And then send us a public comment. All those comments will be compiled and shared with our board and incorporated into the final plan.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate everybody giving some help on that PowerPoint. A lot of information there to share with you. So I want to give everybody now an opportunity to ask any questions they might have in regards to what they saw this evening or any other regional transportation questions that they might have. We are now moving towards that platform so we can see the questions that you might pose to us.
Right now, there haven't been any comments. So the link to the plan summary, the survey, the bike and ped resource, and that has all been linked in the event discussion. So you should be able to access those within this Facebook Live event. Also, if you can't find it in here, it is available at acogok.org under our blog. And we also, under our drop-down menu on our website, there is an Encompass 2045 page. Okay, so we do have, all right, we did receive a question
Yeah, I can take the first one.
sent in. How does ACOG transportation planning fit in with the State Department of Transportation?
Yes, well, the state from time to time issues a new long-range transportation plan. And ACOG is always invited to attend those meetings and be part of their stakeholder group. So with that, we get a very good understanding of where they're wanting to go next with their statewide transportation system and what they're going to be doing in the two major metro areas. One other part of the equation is that each year ODOT comes out with a new 8-year plan. We've incorporated the most recent 8-year plan into this 2045 plan, and that includes many of the projects that you see that they're working on right now. I-240, I-44, I-40 on the east side of town. Many of these projects are included in that 8-year plan, and obviously going forward, they give us an idea of where they're going next and what major construction projects they might have. So we share that information with them. We also meet with them when they're talking about their freight and rail plans, and we discuss those type of issues with them. These are something that the state tends to do about every 4 or 5 years in a similar fashion to us, where we do our regional plan. So those are some of the things that are incorporated in the process. And then we obviously have monthly meetings with all of our communities and our counties that we deal with, and they give us updates on what sort of projects they're looking at. They feed those projects to us for our transportation plan. They submit projects to us for our 2045 plan, and those are some of the ones that you saw earlier in the map. So it's really a big team effort here locally, both with our communities and with the state in order to get this plan completed.
Okay, so then we have another question about projects. So talking about projects, you talked a little bit about how they were picked. So who picks them?
So for example, ODOT has their list of projects. They're generally developed by their 8 planning divisions and then submitted to the ODOT commission to go over those, and then they're prioritized and put into their 8-year plan. What we do with our communities is every 5 years, we get with our communities and we ask them to submit projects just for the 2045 plan or the next plan that's coming up. And we then collect that information, we grade it, we look at where it's located, how many miles it is, how much it's going to possibly cost, and those types of things, how many lanes it might be, or if it's a bike ped project, a description of what that's going to be all about. And then we include that then in our map of the region and how it's going to change here locally. So you'll see in our draft plan summary a mixture of maps of both road type projects, but also bike ped projects. And as Jennifer also mentioned, we roll in there possible transit improvements to look at what our metro could look like in the future.
Okay. How does our plan, for Central Oklahoma, how does that plan fit in with various cities' comprehensive plans?
So we collect the land use information and the zoning information from our cities every few years. In fact, we collect the land use data very frequently. That information is then fed into our long-range land use plan that we look at for each 5-year update. And as Jennifer mentioned, in the 2040 plan and the 2045 plan, we are looking at various scenarios off of that. So it's not just one option for the future, it's multiple options for the future. And so with the land use information that we collect from the cities, that gives us a really good idea of where they're going to go next, how they're going to develop certain open space or redevelop areas in their old parts of town or a different part or a part of town that they haven't worked on recently. And it kind of gives us an idea of how the land uses might change. As the land uses change in our region, that then generates different trips. Certain types of land uses generate more trips, like commercial and office tend to generate more trips rather than industrial type facilities that usually have less trips. So the land use and the comprehensive plans that our cities provide us are a very important part of this.
Okay. Let me check and see if there are any further questions. There are none at this time. And does the ACOG staff do, that was one of the other questions, who writes the plan and why does ACOG write the plan?
It's we get federal funding, so they would like us to do something for that federal funding. So yes, every 5 years, because we're in attainment, we update our plan every 5 years. If we go into non-attainment, like Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, they have 4 years to update their plan, so they have to cycle their plan through a little faster. But so we work with the DOT, ODOT, and Federal Highway, Federal Transit. They provide, Federal Transit and Federal Highway provide us funding to work on these projects, to monitor what's going on, and to put together a plan every 5 years that basically shows what we're wanting to do next. So it's a better way of efficiently and effectively using federal dollars. Even though there's also local dollars involved in the process, where a lot of the projects that we do are requiring local match. So a lot of times the feds may provide 80% of the money, and then the local community or ODOT may provide 20% of the money. This kind of stretches the money a little further, and maybe you get more projects that way.
Okay. There's a lot of data that goes into this plan, especially the map that Jennifer was showing, all of that data that they had to put in. So where does ACOG get all the data from, and how do we get it?
A similar group of folk. From ODOT, they provide us a lot of information on what they're doing. They provide us project information. They also process the projects that we have going. The cities provide us, as I said, land use information. They actually provide us something called building permits, and that information is used to kind of get a better estimate of where people are moving to, and then what sort of residential developments might be being put in. For example, single family housing, multifamily, group homes, nursing homes, jails, those types of things. So we collect those from the city. We collect employment data from the Oklahoma Employment Security Commission. They provide us that sort of information. So that is relayed into this plan. Eric gets some information from ODEQ in regards to air quality. That's something that we watch all the time. You may, folks out there this evening, you may have seen our ozone alert type information. Well, ODEQ provides us some data for that, and we are basically monitoring that long term because that's an area of great interest to us. But it really takes a lot of partners, and we appreciate all the partners helping us and providing data to us. I'm sure at times they feel like we're asking too many times or nagging them, but the more quality information that we get from everybody, then the better plan process and output in the end.
So I've got two final questions. And if, for all of those out there, if you still have a question that we might not have addressed, please type that in so that we can answer that question. I know that ACOG has posted a lot of public survey and our plan is open for public comment. So why do we need public comment? And what do we do with what do we do with our public comments that we receive, and what do we do with the survey results?
Like we said earlier, the feds require us to do this plan, but as part of that process, there's a public input phase that we need to always include. So at the beginning of this whole update, we provide a survey out to folks in the metro area to give us some feedback on what they like, don't like about the transportation system, what they'd like to see, and so forth. Those comments are used or shaped a little bit to provide some of our feedback for our stakeholder advisory group, and we go into some of those issues a little bit more with them. We also carry it forward, and in our final plan, what you may see in some of the stakeholder advisory group type meetings is pie charts, charts and information to show where we are, what our status is, and that sort of thing. But in the end, we also provide actual comments in our final reports that may say, Bob Smith, it will say Bob or Mary or something like that, and then it will have their particular comment of what they would like to see in the region. And in some cases, we may be able to do those things, or those things may be incorporated in the plan. And other things, it may be we don't have the financial capacity to do that. I think a lot of folks would like us to have more sidewalks in the region, or more trails, or other types of facilities. That's always limited to what communities financially can do and what federal funding may be available to help them. So we have to take all those things into account, and we like to include those comments in all the plans that we've ever done. We've done that, and we include those comments in, because it kind of really makes it more local. It's not just a federal plan.
Right.
It's our region's plan, and these are what the local people would like to see.
It makes it our plan.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we do have a question. What are some project types that could help alleviate travel congestion?
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, one of the things that I think we probably need to talk about is the RTA. The RTA is working hard to put in some commuter rail in central Oklahoma and enhance transit. They're also looking at to extend extend their BRT system. There's going to be a new bus rapid transit system on Classen going up Northwest Expressway coming in 2023. And I think they'd like to see more of those types of things. One of the things we have an issue with here is our peak travel times in the morning and the evening is starting to get longer. And one of the things that we have an issue with in some of our corridors is we don't have capacity to add more lanes, because our right-of-way is fairly narrow. And you'll probably see around the region ODOT expanding some lanes on I-40 going east, and maybe on I-40 going west of the fairgrounds in the future. But some of our corridors are very tricky to expand lanes, so we have to look at other things. One of the things that we did in our 2040 plan is we included more intelligent transportation system, or ITS, work in the plan. That basically is ways in which we can link traffic lights together in a corridor, so that you don't go red light, red light, red light, but more so if you keep within the speed limit, you can hit green lights each time. By us being able to move without getting into big traffic congestion and traffic jams and slowdowns, our air quality is a little better that way. Obviously, if we have more folks sharing rides together, that helps. Obviously, if we have more people catching transit, that helps. And in the future, it'll be interesting to see what sort of new technologies come along where we have maybe more people movers that may be electric. And as Erica said also, as our fleet changes over time and we have more efficient vehicles, then that also helps us in regards to air quality. But yeah, the congestion is a concern. It is in all major cities. And it's somewhat relative. We may feel like we've got really bad congestion problems here. But if you've seen some of the pictures of California where they have 10 lanes of traffic and they're all just sitting there, we generally don't have that. So it's relative depending upon which metro in the United States or in the world that you're really in. We're somewhat fortunate here.
Okay, thank you. All right, and I think then just a final, I hope that that answered your question that we received. And then, oh, hold on. Then just our final question is, I think we said that final approval of the plan would be in November of 2021. Who does the final approval and why?
So we've been presenting some data along the way to all of our technical committees and our policy committees over the last year or so. And over the next 6 weeks or so, we'll be continuing to do that. But on November 18th, we'll be presenting the final plan summary to our board, our policy board, which is made up of cities and counties in central Oklahoma. And they will determine if this plan looks good in regards to it includes everything that's needed to do a regional plan. Once our board okays this plan, then it goes to ODOT and Federal Highway and FTA for their approval. They generally sign off on this once it has been approved by our board, and they're also watching what we're presenting and have obviously had questions over the last year or so. So everybody is involved in this process that we need to get their permission to take this plan forward. So like I said, we'll be taking this to the board on November the 18th, and we hope to have it approved at that meeting.
Okay. If there are no further questions from those that are watching us and that are still with us, I think we will end our first Encompass 2045 virtual event. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for being patient with us while we had our audio difficulty. Trust me when I said that it worked when we rehearsed. It worked, I promise. But anyway, thank you so much for staying with us, and thank you for your interest in Encompass 2045. If you have any questions, please go to our website, message us through social media, or email us at transportation@acogok.org. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your evening.